Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn Year. It's day 66 of my comic review video day calendar. And clearly, I dropped the ball yesterday because I didn't wait to review my Batman 66 comic for Bat March until day 66. I missed it by one day. I can't believe I didn't even think of that. Yesterday was day 65, and I reviewed a Batman 66 comic. And today, I'm doing another tie-in to a TV show. And it's not Batman 66, doing a different Batman title every single day. And this time, it is all new Batman Brave and the Bold. This is technically the second volume of Batman Brave and the Bold. The first is just called Batman Brave and the Bold, and then I guess this one is all new. It doesn't even say that on the cover, but when I looked this up later, that is the official title of this book, I guess. But anyway, this comes out in 2011 and is right in the middle of this run, and then after 22 issues or so, I think, there aren't any more of these. I think that's around how long this ran. But anyway, this is Calling All Robins, and it's a fun premise that this TV show absolutely might have done. And another one of those things, I've been reviewing a lot of single-issue tie-in things this year that I've had this with TV shows. I've been really batting 1,000 with my cartoon and TV show tie-ins, where I'm really surprised this wasn't an episode. And it is very authentic in its pacing and in its visuals and in its storytelling style, and it's got the right voices for all the characters, and it makes a lot of sense considering the team we've got here. We've got Shawley Fish writing, who I think did a lot of these kinds of all ages things, and Rick Burchett, who won an Eisner for and he'd been in the game a long time at this point. He won an Eisner for his work on the new Batman Adventures, and second time that's coming up now this month. I need to just break down and finally read that. Maybe at some point I'll review those issue to issue, or at least review a smattering of them to see if there's any interest in that. Do it kind of like I was doing Bad Chat with the individual episodes, which I never finished. Maybe at some point I'll do that, or I'll do a 24-hour stream for that show. That might be how I handle that. I've been really enjoying that format, and people seem to like the really long marathon streams. So I don't know. And now I'm just planning things in a video once again, as I tend to do. But anyway, Rick Burchett is interesting because he's one of the guys who convinced Jim Lee to get into comics, to go to a convention and give someone from DC his portfolio. And so he was instrumental in changing the face, the future of comics as we knew them. He'd been drawing comics, I think, going back to the mid-'80s, at least. But anyway, so this is a real simple, fun issue. At first, it feels like it's going to be a lot more serious than, and I guess in its way it is, than your average episode of Brave and the Bold. Kind of like Chill of the Night, which is maybe the most famous and beloved episode of that show, because it gets away from the typical Saturday morning cartoon formula of that show without losing the flavor and the fun of what it is. But that is, I'm pretty sure Paul Dini wrote that, and it actually deals with Batman's parents' death and his initial origins, and it's a street-level crime drama, the kind of stuff that this show didn't usually deal with. Well, usually you see Bruce only in the Batsuit, and we don't really deal with the Bruce Wayne part of that. And that is true of this issue as well, except we are talking about the fact that his parents died, and his feelings about that are why he gets into the pickle that he gets in this particular issue. So the idea is the Phantom Stranger decides to pull Robins from various time periods, kind of a gimmick, kind of a fun novelty, so that we can see every Robin at this point, or every major one anyway, in history. Remember, this is 2011, so there's other ones past this now, and then characters like Duke Thomas, where I don't know if they count, but they should. I've never understood why that guy's not a Robin, but whatever. I'm doing something else. I'm going to be just Duke Thomas. And then I think he got a mantle later, but I quit reading Current at that point, so I don't really know what he's doing. But I digress. We're talking about Robins. Duke Thomas is neither a Robin, nor did he exist in 2011. So the Phantom Stranger decides to pull together Robins from all these different time periods, assembling a team in order, it's kind of a Robin Justice League or a Robin Teen Titans team, if you like, in order to save Batman's life because he has been shot, which is the kind of thing that show would not usually do, of course. And although I will say, real quick before I finish the premise, that I don't know that this actually goes any farther in its violence or its subject matter than the series would be allowed to. This doesn't feel like that Batman Adventures thing that I talked about when we did that issue a few days ago, where it's getting around TV censorship. I think everything that happens here actually could happen in an episode of that show. Those things were just few and far between because it's throwing back so much to 70s Saturday morning cartoons and to 60s Batman and the like, but it would surprise you every now and again in its subject matter, and then it would also constantly surprised me anyway. I've not seen all of that show, but I've seen quite a bit of it, just in how sophisticated the storytelling would be and how engaging its characters would be, and how good its interpersonal conflicts could be in the context of a really silly, over-the-top kind of cartoon show. But Batman tries to stop a very similar situation to what happened with his parents, with the Wayans, and he's too emotionally involved, and he's a little bit careless. This is a Batman who usually doesn't make mistakes, but in this particular case, the Phantom Stranger says, we have to give him this. Like, Batman Brave and the Bold is very much about the I'm Batman problem, and embraces that entirely, and I've always thought is kind of satirizing it a little bit, where Batman always, and the end of this, the payoff is very much that idea that this is a Batman who has such willpower and like he could be a Green Lantern and such strength of character that he can get through any problem in a way that most people couldn't, and you're just not going to be able to keep him down. But in this particular case, he is too close to the situation, and so he stops this family from getting murdered by a thug in the streets, but then this, I guess he kicks the thug, and the machine gun flies off up against a wall, and it's a little contrived. It goes off, and of course, this is Saturday morning cartoon fare, so it's got to look like laser blasts, and we don't see it actually go through Batman's chest. We see it just go through his cape, which, again, I don't think is censorship. I think it's kind of intentional, almost satirizing censorship. But anyway, so he's been shot real bad, and Phantom Stranger can't help him, so he assembles all these Robins because he says Robin is always there for Batman and is supposed to be, his sidekick, his lifeline, and this is a job for more than one Robin. And arguably it really isn't, especially when you get to the end and what you would assume would be the big threat to Batman being saved ends up not being a threat at all. Not that Phantom Stranger would know that, but this ends up just being an excuse to kind of compare and contrast at least just a little bit all these Robins from different time periods. And at first I assumed that this was going to be an interdimensional thing, and we do that with Batman with Brave and the Bold constantly. That show loves its multiple Batmans from different universe stories where it'll mix your zebra Batman with your rainbow Batman and assemble teams of a lot of different Batmans. So we're doing it finally with Robin, but it's different time periods, so it is a little bit odd that they kind of, in my mind, look like at least some of them are drawn in different art styles, particularly Carrie Kelly from Dark Knight Returns. Her character model is based very much on what Frank Miller did with that, and so like her head design is very different from everybody else's in this, and we've got a pretty much everybody else looks like a Brave and the Bold version, but still drawn with pretty different character models. And not that I expect all the Robins to look the same because they're different characters, but they do kind of look like they belong in different universes a little bit, which again is a little bit odd because they're in different time periods. And the other thing strange about it is Phantom Stranger doesn't warn them not to mess up the timeline, and when he sends them back to their respective time periods, there's no discussion about their not being allowed to talk about it or that their minds are going to be wiped or anything like that. So as far as I know, everybody knows about all of this by the end, and that might not be that big of a deal because they just got sent back or forward in time in order to put Batman in a Lazarus Pit, because God, I cannot get away from Lazarus Pits lately with Batman stories. Last night, this was not Spawn year, but I just reviewed the new Black Label, or the recent anyway, Black Label Catwoman book, Catwoman Lonely City, and that deals with the Lazarus Pit, and we've had Lazarus Pit stories at least once or twice already in Not Spawning. Well, the Batman Adventure story we did with Talia also dealt with the Lazarus Pit. I can't get away from the thing. But anyway, so it's maybe not that big of a deal, except for the fact that Jason Todd is here and is basically told in my favorite moment in the comic, by Damian Wayne that he gets killed. He doesn't spell it completely out, but Jason should be able to read between the lines. So I don't know, like that could influence the future maybe, or I guess the past now, but Jason's future. I don't know. There's this bit where they're kind of bickering, and Damian says, "Hey, I know what happens to you, and if you don't quit irritating me, it's going to happen sooner." I thought that was pretty funny. So we've got Nightwing, who is trying to lead the team, and of course that makes a lot of sense, and some of the Robins resist that a little bit, but he's making all the big calls. There's one in particular that I kind of question, but I'll get to that in a second. We've got Carrie Kelly, we've got Stephanie Brown, Robin. She was Robin for a minute. I forget in exactly when, what era. I think it was like mid-2000s maybe, and then maybe early 2000s. I forget, but of course she's a Batgirl also, and I'll talk about that again a little bit later too. And you got Damian Wayne and Tim Drake, and is that everybody? I think that's everybody. And so Nightwing, they go to the mountains where the League of Assassins are, and Nightwing says, so I need Stephanie Brown and Tim Drake to stay with Batman and protect him. And Stephanie's like, oh, he doesn't trust us because he's making us stay behind. And I'm thinking, I mean, I guess he's maybe not coming out and telling them exactly what his plan is, but once you know what's going on, you actually should leave your most trusted people with Batman, because Nightwing's not there to supervise, and Ra's al Ghul and the other League of Assassins could show up anywhere around this mountain and do anything to Batman's body if you don't have the right people there to protect him. So this is actually, in my mind, the most important job, at least beyond Nightwing just, going and making sure that he can get his hands on the Lazarus Pit with whoever else he brings with him. But this is a very important job. And so it's maybe understandable that at first Stephanie doesn't understand the importance of the job, and I like the speech that Tim Drake gives to her, no, he really does need somebody he trusts. Think about the situation, kind of like I just broke down. But what's weird with Nightwing is he doesn't actually know these people, so I'm not totally sure why he trusts them. He doesn't leave anybody that he's already familiar with. He says Tim Drake seems like he's probably a detective. And Stephanie Brown, he just says she seems like, he breaks down all the different character traits that he's observing, and he says, well, Stephanie Brown seems good. That's all he says about her. She seems good, but kind of like hot-headed, or like she's leaping before she looks. And you left her to watch Batman. Okay, I don't don't fully understand that. Like I said, there's kind of some surface breakdown in dealing with the differences in the MOs and motivations. Or I guess I should just say methodology of each of the Robins. That Dick Grayson is discussing in his narration boxes, and so he says that you'd think that Jason and Damian would maybe fight the same way and be the same kind of ruthless in battle, but they're not. Like, Jason Todd he seems always angry, and he is throwing punches every which way and isn't really thinking before what he's doing. And he says that this is just all real kind of true to form for the classic versions of these characters. Whereas Damian Wayne is very methodical in what he does, and he has the same sort of energy, but he is a very different kind of character. And I like the little references here and there. Nothing like super deep pull or anything, but you're rewarded for knowing these characters. So there's a nice bit, but it's not too like ham-fisted or obvious about it either. I don't think, and you can get away with a little bit more of that sort of thing in this context. Like I'll mention this real quick at the beginning. Like, everything is case by case with me, so sometimes these kinds of like Smallville-ish foreshadowing things, like winking at the audience, kinds of moments can irritate me. In this particular context, I think you can. Again, you can get away with more of that. So right at the beginning, you've got Nightwing teaming up with Speedy, and he says, "Hey, Speedy, you're not a..." And this sets up the premise, or the sidekick theme real well, I think, where he says, "Speedy, it's maybe time to grow up and stop calling yourself Speedy." And he says, "Well, I like the name Speedy. You could have kept being Robin. Why not?" And he says, and Speedy says, "What was I going to call myself, Red Arrow?" And in the context of this, I'm fine with that. Especially because, from his perspective, that sounds too derivative and stupid. Why would I call myself Red Arrow? So it's not even foreshadowing for the future. This is probably a version of this character that never calls himself that. And at the same time, you do have the sense that more or less this ends up being the definitive history of DC, even though Brave and the Bold is a different thing and is a much more cartoonish version of this universe, given that all of these different Robins do end up happening. And that is maybe a little bit weird, because in Brave and the Bold, we don't deal with Robin very often. I think he appears, but it's sort of, I think, but I can't remember because I haven't watched that show in a long time. But but like, we have some major superheroes that occasionally pop in that show, but the whole point of Brave and the Bold was doing more obscure characters. So you don't get, and with villains too, so like, you don't get the Joker that often, but he does show up, and you don't get Two-Face more than like once or twice, I think. Again, been a little while since I watched that, but anyway, I do appreciate that this does stick to the premise. Real quick, I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess the point I was trying to make with the Robins is, it is a little bit of a pill to swallow that this particular Batman needs Robin as much as Phantom Stranger says that he is, given that most episodes of that show, he's just teaming up with other, more B-C-list superheroes compared to himself. And then he has this whole history of Robins. So that's a little odd. I guess in that way it's maybe not as authentic, but I also feel like I could see the show going to that place and just saying, yeah, we just don't see all the adventures where he's with Robin. We're seeing all the ones where he's with other people, and you have kind of a decompressed timeline, and so Batman probably has like 18 adventures every couple of days. We just don't see most of them. But anyway, the reference I was going to mention earlier is with Damian Wayne. They run into the League of Assassins, and Damian says, and they're about to attack before Ra's al Ghul steps in and says, "No, I'm actually fine with them saving Batman." And Damian says, "Oh, you guys don't know me yet." I guess that makes sense. So that was kind of fun. and then Ra's al Ghul assumes that the Lazarus Pit is going to drive Batman insane, and I assume that's like vengeance on Batman, because he seems like he has like a trick up his sleeve. He's being too helpful, and there's this question from the Robins as to, what his game is, and then he goes, but I forgot to mention, when you go into the Lazarus Pit, it does revive you, but it also takes away your sanity. And then somehow Nightwing just knows that it won't, because he's Batman, which again is kind of true to the show. So Nightwing goes, yeah, he's going to be fine. He's Batman. Maybe it does that to Ra's al Ghul, but again, strength of character or whatever, Batman's going to be fine. He's immune to these kinds of things. It's an intentional I'm Batman problem. And then the big payoff gag at the end, we've got Madame Xanadu of all characters. I like that you've got the honest to God team up thing going on with this Brave and the Bold comic, because that's the premise of that show, even though Batman is out of commission through most of it. So you have Nightwing and Speedy at the beginning, and then you've got Phantom Stranger and Madame Xanadu. There's a few different team-ups here, which are kind of fun. And then the big payoff at the end is, well, if the Robin thing didn't work out, Madame Xanadu was going to bring out Batgirls, and they would have handled it. And there's kind of a tongue-in-cheek gender role thing going on through this, where you've got Robins bickering about whether or not girls can be Robins, and then at the end it's like, well, if the boys can't handle it, surely the girls can. And so it's having fun with a kind of traditional comic gender roles. And the thing I find really funny about the Batgirl thing is you would have had Stephanie Brown with both of them, because the Batgirl to the far right in that panel, you've got the four Batgirls, including Cassandra Cain, and I don't know if that's supposed to be like the old Kate Kane, but I don't think so. I'm not sure who the Golden Age Batgirl is. But you've got, of course, Barbara Gordon, and then that is Stephanie Brown Batgirl on the end. And there's no mention of that you're looking at the same character you just saw earlier, saying, well, yeah, I can be a Robin too. So I don't know. I find that really amusing. Anyway, a really fun comic. I don't know how I talked about it for 22 minutes, but there it is. I talked about it for the amount of pages to minutes that are in this comic. Anyway, tomorrow I will talk about another Batman comic for Bat March, and hope you enjoyed it. I will see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan, and happy reading.